Kate Winslet has always been careful with her words. She never exposed the truth about what really happened behind the scenes. She never revealed who stayed and who walked away. Until now. Because in one quiet moment, she finally broke. And what she just admitted about Leonardo DiCaprio, about the day everything fell apart, has left fans in tears. Only he came, she said. And once you understand what she meant by that, you'll never see their friendship the same way again. It wasn't a red carpet. It wasn't an awards show. It was just a quiet service, private, painful, and far from the cameras. Kate Winslet had just suffered a devastating personal loss. Not something she ever spoke about in public. Not something fans even knew had happened at the time. She didn't post about it. She didn't invite the press. She just showed up, broken, to say goodbye. And the truth is, no one expected Leonardo DiCaprio to be there. They hadn't filmed together in years. They lived oceans apart. They were both busy in different chapters of their lives. But when Kate looked up, through tears, through grief, there he was. No entourage, no announcement, just Leo, quiet, present, there. She said later in an almost whisper, only he came. It wasn't just that he showed up. It was how he stayed, how he stood next to her when others stayed away. There was no press release, no Instagram post, no applause, because for Leo it wasn't about public friendship. It was about loyalty, and for Kate, at that moment it meant everything. People talk about co-stars all the time. They gossip about who flirts on set, who drifts apart, who stays friendly for the cameras. But what Kate experienced that day wasn't Hollywood loyalty. It was something deeper, quieter, realer. Leo had been there when she was young and scared, when she didn't think she could finish Titanic, when the pressure nearly crushed her, when she questioned everything, her body, her voice, her talent. And now, decades later, he was still showing up, still silently standing beside her when the rest of the world moved on. She didn't name names. She didn't say who didn't come, but fans could guess. The industry can be cold. Friends disappear when the spotlight dims. But Leo, he was different. What's most striking is how Kate never dramatized it. She didn't tell the story for sympathy or attention. In fact, she resisted telling it at all. It slipped out during an interview, off topic, unplanned, when someone asked her about the hardest day of her life, and all she said was this, only he came. It was just 3 words, but they carried a weight that left the interviewer speechless. And when the clip surfaced online, fans broke down in the comments, because they remembered. They remembered how young they were when they saw Titanic. They remembered that last scene, that final goodbye. They remembered the rawness, the heartbreak, the hope. And now, decades later, they were realizing something. That bond wasn't just acting. It was something else entirely. Leonardo DiCaprio quietly became the one person who never judged her for breaking down. Kate Winslet was just 21 when Titanic launched her into the spotlight. To the world, she was radiant, confident, effortless. But behind the scenes, Kate was unraveling. She didn't feel glamorous. She didn't feel talented. And she certainly didn't feel like she belonged on the biggest movie set of all time. The pressure was crushing. Every scene, every headline, every camera flash, it all chipped away at her. And as the film's fame soared, so did the scrutiny. People criticized her body. Paparazzi mocked her appearance. Producers whispered about how she didn't fit the leading lady mold. Kate said later, I was still just a girl, and I thought I was failing. But Leo never joined in the mockery. He didn't shrink away from her insecurity. He leaned in. He joked with her when she was anxious. He distracted her when the pressure mounted. And perhaps most importantly, he saw her, not as a rising star, not as Rose, but as Kate. She once said, he was always just Leo to me, the one person who never tried to fix me. And in a world obsessed with appearances, that meant everything. Back then, they were just co-stars. But Kate would later admit that Titanic was one of the loneliest experiences of her life. Because while the world saw glamour, she felt guilt. Guilt for being overwhelmed. Guilt for not loving the spotlight. Guilt for not looking the way they expected her to. And Leo? He never asked her to change. She recalled one day on set when she broke down between takes, completely undone by a tabloid headline that ridiculed her size. She was shaking, embarrassed, furious, and Leo just sat with her, didn't say much, just passed her a tissue and waited, not to console her, not to give advice, just to say, "I'm here." That moment stayed with her. Years later, during another interview, Kate said something that didn't make many headlines, but it should have. She was asked about her most grounding friendship in the industry. She smiled. Leo. Always Leo. It wasn't a romantic story. It wasn't filled with grand gestures. It was just consistent, steady, real. And in Hollywood, that's rare, because everyone else saw the fame. Everyone else saw the red carpets. But Leo saw the cracks and chose to stay anyway. Kate has said that if she hadn't had him during those early years, she might have walked away from acting altogether. And the irony? He was going through it too. Leo was just as overwhelmed, just as scrutinized. But they never tried to fix each other. They just survived it side by side. Two young actors, drowning in a sea of expectation, clinging to the only thing that felt real. Each other. They didn't date. They didn't fall into some Hollywood fantasy. They built something far more rare, trust. And that trust? It lasted decades. Hollywood friendships rarely last. Time passes. Fame shifts. People grow apart. But not them. Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio never drifted. In fact, as the years went on, they only got closer. Even when they weren't seen together for months, maybe years, there was never any doubt. When awards season came around, there they were, holding hands, whispering between interviews, laughing in ways that didn't feel performative but personal. And fans started to notice. There was something in the way they looked at each other. Not flirtation, not nostalgia, something quieter, something that said, "You were there before the world knew me, and you're still here now." But they always insisted it was never romantic. Kate once told a reporter, "It's the most platonic love I've ever known." But that only made people wonder more. Because platonic or not, who else gets that kind of devotion? She was there when Leo won his long-awaited Oscar. Not just in the audience, but seated beside his mother. She cried when he accepted the award. And later, when asked about that night, Kate said, "It was like my brother finally got the recognition he deserved. I've never been prouder." Leo, for his part, has said almost nothing. He's never gushed, never told long stories. But when asked point-blank who he trusts most in the world, he simply said, "Kate." They've lived full lives in parallel. Different marriages, different heartbreaks, different cities, different paths. But always they circle back. There's a clip from a red carpet years ago. Kate is speaking to a journalist mid-sentence when Leo arrives behind her. She turns, sees him, and her entire face softens. She forgets the question, and all she says is, "Oh, there you are," like nothing else mattered, like she'd been waiting for him to appear. That moment went viral, not because it was romantic, but because it felt so pure. In an industry built on scripted emotions, their bond felt untouched. Like something from a different time, before PR teams, before social media, before every friendship became a marketing move. Of course, rumors swirled. They always do. Some said they had been together briefly, privately, during the filming of Revolutionary Road. Others believed they made a pact. If they were still single by a certain age, they'd marry each other. But neither ever confirmed anything. And the silence only added to the myth. Because whether or not they crossed that line, does it even matter? What they had was rare, deeper than gossip, more lasting than chemistry. It was a love that didn't need labels. It just was. And in recent years, as both Kate and Leo have faced the more private, painful parts of life, divorce, loss, aging, one truth has become clearer. They still reach for each other, still check in, still show up. Not because they have to, but because they never stopped. More than a decade after Titanic, Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio reunited on screen. Not as wide-eyed lovers on a doomed ship, but as a bitter, crumbling couple in Revolutionary Road. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. In Titanic, they had become the symbol of young, unstoppable love. In Revolutionary Road, they were its aftermath. But what no one realized at the time was just how much the film mirrored their real lives. Kate was going through a private unraveling. Her marriage to director Sam Mendes, who happened to be directing the film, was already under immense strain. The shoot didn't help. And there she was, performing gut-wrenching arguments and emotional breakdowns with Leo, not just any actor, not a hired co-star, but Leo, the man who had held her hand through the most fragile parts of her early career. The man who had once quietly passed her a tissue when she couldn't keep it together. Now, in Revolutionary Road, he was shouting at her, screaming, crying, breaking her down on camera. And Kate wasn't acting. She later admitted that many of those scenes felt almost too real. Because when you've known someone that long, when you've shared that much history, pretending to hate them hits different. In one particularly brutal scene, Kate's character collapses under the weight of their marriage. She's silent. Still, Leo's character tries to reach her, but she doesn't respond. It's a quiet moment. But those on set said when the cameras cut, Kate stayed frozen for nearly a minute. She couldn't speak. It wasn't about the scene. It was everything underneath it. All the memories, all the times Leo had been her safe place, now turned into scripted destruction. And Leo, he broke too. After that day, he reportedly walked off set and sat alone in his trailer for hours. He didn't take calls. He didn't speak to anyone. Because acting with Kate, breaking her even in fiction, wasn't just a role. It was personal. She said later, "We didn't know what would come up, doing this film together, but it was heavier than we expected. Some wondered if it was a mistake. Too raw, too close. But others saw the truth. That Revolutionary Road wasn't just a film. It was a reckoning, a chance for both of them to process what they'd never said, to explore a version of their story they never lived but maybe feared. And while the film didn't break box office records, it became something else entirely, a mirror, for them, for fans, for anyone who's ever loved someone they couldn't quite hold on to. After filming wrapped, Kate disappeared from the spotlight for a while. So did Leo. But when they re-emerged at the Golden Globes that year, they found each other again. There's a photo from that night, Kate clutching her award, Leo behind her, eyes full of pride. They weren't acting. They didn't need to. Later, when asked what it was like to work together again, Kate gave the simplest answer of all. "It was hard, but it reminded me why I trust him with everything." Hollywood isn't kind to people as they age, especially women. Careers slow down, roles shrink, public interest fades. But for Kate Winslet, something strange happened as the years passed. Her fame didn't vanish, it shifted. She became something rarer, respected, not just for her talent, not just for surviving the system, but for how she carried herself through it. And through all of it, Leonardo DiCaprio was still there. They rarely worked together again after Revolutionary Road, but that didn't matter, because their bond wasn't about work. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't tied to scripts or studios. It was real. As Kate's family life changed, through marriage, divorce, motherhood, Leo never commented. He never inserted himself, but he never disappeared. And when Leo faced his own waves of public judgment about his dating life, his lifestyle, his roles, Kate remained silent. Not because she didn't have thoughts, but because she understood him in a way no one else did. There's a kind of friendship that doesn't need checking in, that doesn't rely on constant messages or shared schedules. It's just there, quietly pulsing beneath everything. That's what they built. In 2017, they were photographed on vacation together in St. Tropez. No press tour, no interviews, no reason except each other. Just the two of them, sitting on a dock, feet in the water, laughing. And the internet exploded. Fans were stunned. Not because they were together, but because it reminded them that this wasn't an on-screen illusion. This was something real, unlabeled, unbreakable, unchanging. Kate later said, "I've known him for over half my life. He's my closest friend in this industry, maybe in the world." And that's the part that hits fans hardest now. Because as the years go on, and the iconic images of Titanic start to feel like memories from another life, Leo and Kate are still here, still standing, still holding on. When they reunited at the Oscars in 2016, it felt like a homecoming. Kate in a sleek black gown, Leo finally the favorite to win. As he walked the red carpet, photographers screamed his name, but his eyes searched for hers. And when he found her, everything else melted away. Later that night, after he won Best Actor, she was the first person he embraced offstage. Not his manager, not his co-stars, Kate, and she cried. Not for herself, but for him. She said later, "I couldn't stop the tears. It was everything we'd both survived, coming full circle." It was a moment so raw, so unguarded, that even jaded Hollywood veterans admitted, this wasn't for the cameras. This was love. Not romantic, not scripted, just love. The kind that doesn't dim with time. The kind that grows stronger in silence. And now, as they both enter a new phase of life, past their 40s, past the constant spotlight, they seem more at peace than ever. Kate is vocal about aging on her own terms, about rejecting Hollywood beauty standards, about embracing who she is. Leo, too, has shifted, becoming more private, more selective, more serious. But one thing hasn't changed. Whenever their names come up, together or apart, there's a pause, a breath, a memory, because to so many fans, they aren't just Jack and Rose. They're a symbol of something we all hope for, that even in a world built on make-believe, real connection is possible. And that sometimes the people who see us at our worst stay. Even decades later, it's been over 25 years since Titanic set the world on fire. Since Jack and Rose stood at the bow of that ship and promised they'd never let go. But what no one expected is that off-screen they never really did. Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio have never been just co-stars. They've never been just friends. What they've shared all these years defies every label Hollywood tries to assign. And now, decades later, it's clearer than ever. Because in one recent interview, Kate was asked something simple. Who's always been there for you? She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. She didn't name a parent, a sibling, or a spouse. She looked down, took a breath, and said it. Only he came. 3 words. Soft, barely audible, but they landed like thunder. She didn't explain the moment. She didn't offer names or details, but fans knew. It was a funeral, a goodbye, a day when others chose not to show up. And Leo did. Not for press, not to be seen, just to be there. And that's what separates their story from every on-screen love story they've ever played. Because in real life, love often looks quiet. It looks like showing up when no one else does. It looks like sitting beside someone who's breaking and saying nothing. It looks like standing in the rain outside a memorial, not for attention, but because you promised you'd always be there. That's what Leo gave her. Not flowers, not grand gestures, presence. And that's what Kate still can't speak about without her voice cracking. Fans didn't just cry because it was Leo. They cried because it reminded them of the people they've lost. The friends who faded. The calls that never came. And in a world where so many friendships are fleeting, performative, conditional, this one felt sacred. Because how often do you get to grow up with someone, fall apart beside them, survive fame, heartbreak, distance, and still hold on to the core of who you were together? It's no wonder fans have never let go of them. They're more than a cinematic memory. They're proof that some bonds don't break, even when everything else does. There's a reason that clip of Kate's interview went viral. People weren't just responding to celebrity gossip. They were seeing something they longed for in their own lives. That one person who doesn't need to be asked, who just comes. And as fans rewatch Titanic now, knowing everything Kate and Leo have endured, knowing that their real story is even more beautiful than the fictional one, they see it differently. When Jack holds Rose in that freezing water, when he tells her never to let go, when she survives, knowing she'll carry that moment forever, it doesn't feel like acting anymore. It feels like a promise. And all these years later, they've kept it. Not as lovers, not as legends, as something even more rare. Two souls who met at the height of chaos and never let each other fall. And when Kate said those words, "Only he came," the world understood what she meant. Leo wasn't just a co-star. He was the constant, the anchor, the last man standing. For more of the latest news, check out this video.